Hi, this is John though with the DNB Academy and welcome to another sound recreation video. Alright, so for this occasion, I decided to go with this brand new tune from Tantrum Desire called Rhythm, which sounds like this, and also gonna show you which sound we're gonna recreate. Alright, so let's play the track just a little bit. So this is the stab we gotta work on. This one right here. And this is what we came up with. Alright, so let's run you guys through whatever I just did here to achieve this sound. Okay, first things first, let's open our instance of Serum, which is obviously where the patch was designed. So I'm going to turn off all the effects we got going on here, the audio effect rack, the EQ, the compressor, all of that. So this is what we're left in terms of Serum patch. All right, so the approach for this one is actually, if you listen to the tune, to the sound, I mean, it really sounds like an actual brass instrument playing, all right? So if that's the case, we need to think about it and try to sort of get that brass feeling from the synth. And how did I achieve that? Was pretty much by layering our dry signal, this patch as you're listening here, which is something close to a respace, all right? It's not that different. It's just being controlled with LFO, or in this case an envelope that controls the shape. And then this reverb layer and this texture layer made that brass feeling come up to the top, all right? So first things first, let's go with the patch, okay? It's a really simple patch, if you look at it. So it just plays this really short with just a tiny bit of release to help the connection between notes to work. So all right, let's go first with our oscillator, A, which is this saw wave, really simple. It's the default wavetable from Serum. In random mode, so the phase doesn't matter where it's sitting at. And then I just applied a bit of FM from B, which is being triggered by this envelope 1. As you can see, this envelope 1 makes most of the job. So it's been assigned to 6 different parameters: the A warp, A fine, B fine, sub-oscillator level, filter cutoff, and also the distortion. So this does pretty much everything when it comes to the patch, all right? So if you see this, we've got this patch, and I've also assigned this obviously to the fine tune here, just to give it a little bit more extra detune, especially when both oscillators are turned on, all right? So this just makes up for this initial sound. Obviously there is a bit of processing, which I can also like just mute for you guys to see the raw sound here, right? Really simple stuff. Now let's turn on oscillator B, which is pretty much the same as this one, but instead of having just one voice, we are using 3 voices, all right? So we can widen up the sound a little bit, even though the detune is just sitting pretty much down at the bottom. But with this, we can actually, like, if we want to reuse this patch for anything else, we can achieve a more like racy detuned sound. As you can hear, you just get a couple octaves lower here. So yeah, this is it. You hear like a more distorted sort of respace sound. But in this case, we want this to be a little bit more, you know, less detuned. So that's the approach I went with this one. And then the level is just a little bit different than our oscillator A, which takes the main role on this patch, and that oscillator B just like sitting on top. All right. Then I've got the sub oscillator, which is sitting on the -2 octave as well. So it just gives a little bit more of low end, but it's also being routed straight out of Serum, so it doesn't get through all the effects that we can apply. It's just a way of getting like a richer low end, even though in the original tune, there's like a main sub bass and a main bass that's playing beneath. But then this stab, since it's playing on top of that bass, it actually feels like it's really bassy. But I'm pretty sure Tantrum Desire just roll off all the lows, or most of the lows, okay? So now that we got our sub oscillator on, we can actually show you what's going on the filter. Because once again, that's where all the movement comes from, this envelope design with these settings. So it's just like really, actually a slow, not that slow, but it's a pretty decent stabby sort of shaped envelope on the attack. And then 399 milliseconds up on the decay, negative 4.7 dB on the sustain, and then quite a bit of release with like close to like 600 milliseconds. So this just leaves us with this really cool ramp down on our sound. All right. So the filter, it's just a low pass 18 with a cutoff with directional going bipolar from left to right. So we can actually get to a more interesting, we're not just like hovering, the filter is not overshadowing most of the frequency range. So we still get loads of mids and highs, but still with that filtered effect. Then I just applied a little bit of drive, as you can see here, 9%, then 20% on the fat. So it just, once again, fattens things up quite a bit. Then on the voicing tab here, we should like probably turn on the always on the portamento, because as I said, in a later stage, you might end up wanting to play a bit more close notes, if you know what I mean. Like they are pretty far apart here, but if you want to play some really weird stuff, that's the way to go. All right. So this is pretty much all we have here. We do have these envelopes, but once again, they are not assigned to anywhere. It's just a matter of like if I wanted to add some extra things to the patch. So right, let's flip Serum screen and go straight to our effects tab. All right. First things first, distortion. This brings a lot up into the table, right? So it just brightens the sound, gives it a bit more power, but it still doesn't crunch the sound, all right? And that's what we wanted, because we want this sound to be kind of clean before going into the processing within Ableton, all right? So this is just what I made here, also being automated by the envelope 1. Then we got some chorus. It's a mild amount of chorus. You see, there's not much going on, but it just gives a bit of width on the mids, and that's what we wanted. Then a bit of EQ, as you can see, and here this EQ does quite a bit because it removes the harshness and the muddiness from the mids. Somewhere, I can say somewhere around, let's see, it's this band here, it's like 500, between like 400 and 500 hertz. That's usually where those muddy frequencies reside. So we applied a notch filter there, and then a kind of like a small boost on the tops. All right. Then we turned on our compressor in multiband mode, so it's pretty much like an OTT sort of. And what we did, pretty much take most of the highs and the lows, because we don't really want those with that much presence on our sound. It's all about the mids here and the low mids. All right, so that's why we just boosted them here. And we could like eventually boost a bit more of lows if you want to make this more bassy, but in this case I'm just going straight down to 0. This one is like 30-ish% on the tops, and then the mids like 200 is like fully boosted with these settings right here. All right, so this is what it takes to achieve the core fundamental sound for this rhythm stab from Tantrum Desire, all right? So this is pretty much it. It's like a brassy feeling, but now we need to process this, all right, guys? So now let's go step by step with what I've done here. Okay, so as you can see here, this is an audio effect rack. So it contains 3 layers of effects, and within each layer, there's plenty of other effects. So that's why it's called an effect rack. It's one of the best tools we've got on Ableton because it allows us to actually layer plenty of different sounds on top of each other. In that way, we can achieve like pretty interesting textures and volume, right? So this first layer is just a dry signal. So this is like the first initial output that we want to start adding stuff on top of, all right? So I just added this EQ and this isotope trash too. So the EQ just rolls off a little bit of the high, the lows, I mean. It tames down these first initial harmonics, and also another cut on the mid section here on the 500 Hertz area, and another boost on the 2K spot, so you can get a bit more snappy. And then we got this Isotope Trash 2 for distortion, all right? It's one of my favorite plugins for distortion still. I've been using it for years. And I just applied this distortion preset called Elastic Trash with 1.2 on the drive. Everything else is just default. And obviously I got the limiter on. This way it allows us to clip the sound with the distortion, so it will be easier to achieve higher and louder mix downs later on, all right? So this is how it sounds with these two parameters. All right, so it's quite a good improvement on our sound. Then I listened to the original patch and I was like, all right, we need to get to a point where this bass step sounds like a brass. All right, brass instrument. So how can we go there? Since like the sound is pretty much there, we just need something to create room, right? So I decided to go with like a really small reverb in a sort of different approach. So then I use this reverb audio effect rack layer. So within this reverb layer, this is how the chain starts. So we've got this OTT with the settings. So let me just show you how it sounds now. This is without the reverb, this is with it. So immediately sounds like a brass instrument, all right? At least for me, it sounds way more natural and acoustic. So for that reason, what I did was just like apply an OTT, Ableton's OTT, and I completely neglected the tops. I didn't want to work on them. They were good as they were. So I just took down all the lows, as you can see here, and boosted the mids quite a bit. So we are compressing the mids and bringing them up. So now the Valhalla Vintage Verb, which is my reverb of choice for this specific sound, can actually act up on those frequency ranges that I want, which is, as I told you before, the low mids and some of the high mids as well. Those are the most crucial parts of the spectrum for us. So these are the settings I use. So I went with the Bright Hall, which once again, it just makes things, you know, super bright and clear. We don't have to actually keep on EQing to make this sound brighter. And I got to like a fastest attack I could. The size is 61.2%. I didn't want it that big, but also not that small. So just a matter of finding the balance that you're looking for. Right here, I left pretty much everything by default. So the late reverb is like 100%. It's like there is no late or early reflections, just like as it is. Pretty much like the early is like 34, but it's like nothing here on Valhalla Room. Then this is default, and obviously a low cut, because we've been doing all that job for nothing, right? But just another precaution. Let's not apply reverb to the low end. We don't want that in this patch. And also iCuts, EQ here on the 9.470 Hertz, okay? So this is what I did within the actual reverb patch and VST in this case. Then, once again, some corrective EQ, all right? Just to make sure we don't have any bad information on our lows, right? So it's just like cut around 300 Hertz and some tweaks, especially with OTT, you can bring loads of things up, all right? So with this EQ, I'm just making sure that those things don't get overwhelming, all right? So it's just pretty much notch filters and just quite a bit of a boost here on the 732 Hertz because I felt like I needed it. So that's it. To close off this chain, I added the saturator. That does quite a bit, like, once again, it just brings those parts of the sound that we want to the top. So it's just a medium curve with 7.75 dB on the drive and the soft clip on. Because that way we're managing to sort of like clip the sound a little bit. It's not going to be totally because we still don't have anything here turned on at the end of the chain. So yeah, this is our reverb patch. I mean audio effect rack in this case. So it's another layer on top of our original bass. At this point, I felt like there was just like, on the original sound, as you can hear, there is quite a bit of texture going on. It's like growly. Obviously, there's also some information from the other bass sounds that are playing underneath that contribute to the texture of the sound, all right? But since we're trying to recreate this as accurately as possible, I decided to add this new layer, which is called the texture layer. If you hear this, it's just some crunch, all right? So for that, I applied a Pro Cube first, so I could remove all the lows. I can even actually, listening it now, I can even go further with it and get like a big duck here, because I wanted to get just sort of this part of the spectrum to act up, but I didn't want to lose everything that we got going on here, all right? So for that reason, I went with this, okay? Next, I added one of my favorite plugins from Devious Machines. It's called Texture. This is just like a plugin so you can add layers on top of your sounds, okay? So what I did here was pretty much that, okay? It's just a tiny bit of noise playing on top of it. Just a digital pink noise. You've got plenty of options. But for this case, I wanted this digital pink noise, that if I go like 100% wet, we can just get the information from the pink noise, which can't work. That's why I left it there, because I wanted you to see that how this can be an issue regarding phasing, since we're doing parallel processing. But if we apply this to 100% wet, we still get the texture, we still get everything, but we're not doubling up sounds, all right? So we've got like 100% wet, so no phasing is gonna happen in the future, okay? So after texture, because there's not much that I can tell within this plugin, besides like I just applied the basic noise called digital pink noise, and I worked a bit with the sort of ADSR controls that we got here. So it's like super fast attack, a little bit of hold so that the texture could breathe, like super fast decay as well. We don't want this to actually get prolonged too long. And then a bit of gating and limiting also on default. I applied a bit of, I was thinking about, but yeah, I actually didn't apply any texture EQ, because there's something you can do in this plugin. You can apply some EQ to the texture and here to the overall sound, all right? So that's why this plugin is like super complete compared with its peers, all right? So this is the process to achieve the texture, but then I just wanted to crunch things a little bit better. So I went with Minimal Audio's Rift. So without Rift, we just don't get that noise on the top, all right? That noise can be beneficial, all right? For texture and many other things. Okay, my people, so this is the overall processing that we applied to our bass. So to summarize things, these are three layers: the dry signal, the reverb, and the texture, both being mixed on top of the dry signal. So as you can see, the dry signal takes the main role spot, and then these are just layers playing underneath it, just to build up some more character to our track. And usually this is the best way in terms of CPU, in terms of like creativity as well. So this method we can do on Ableton is just like the best I can find at the moment, besides some bitwig aspects as well that can do similar to this. Okay, so now let's wrap up the chain, the overall chain that we got here, because these are layers, but then at the end we need to sort of like understand this as we were making drums. All right, so we've got three layers, so we now need to make sure that those three layers sound like one, and it's not just a reverb and then the dry signal there. So we need to glue those things together, and that's why I usually go with this method that is simply just a Pro Q3, which is my main corrective EQ before just like saying, yo, the tune's wrapped up. So after all these processing things that we got going on here, this is what I did. So I applied a sideband here. So this way we can control the stereo information. So I'm making sure that as you can see, everything from the 230 hertz below, it's going to be mono. That's what we want. And then here, everything from the right, it's going to have its place on the stereo field. And actually, there's quite a bit of a boost on the 7K spot here. Somehow I felt like I needed it. And then I got some other normal EQ points, just once again boosting this part over here and then taking off a bit of the harshness that the texture probably added in. So this is what it sounds like. But yeah, it sounded good to me, but once again, we need to glue this. We need to make this come together. So I apply this glue compressor with the settings, like a relatively, like, I would say slow attack with a kind of a fast release in this point. So I use the glue compressor from Cytomic. It's a native plugin from Ableton. Then I turn the soft clip on, and then it's like the classic, just playing around with your thresholds and makeup gain up until you're happy, up until you feel like all those loud and quiet peaks get balanced where you, like, up to your taste, all right? You know what I mean? So that's what I did. I just played around with thresholds, like just taking it off until I feel like, all right, I'm compressing it too much. See, this is just too much. And I just went to a point, I can put the makeup down, like all the way down. So it's just like, yeah, this is too much. You can feel it. But like somewhere around here, I feel like things get balanced, but obviously it's not loud. So I need to make up our gain reduction. To get there. All right, guys. So this is pretty much it when it comes to the overall design. I'm going to play you through on top of the main track. I'm just going to take off some of the lows from the original track, but let me know if you find like this is actually similar to it. All right? Actually, put it lower. So yeah, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully this will help you trying to recreate some of your favorite sounds, and which is actually one of the best sound design practices you can make on your sessions. All right, see you on the next one.